debt is not real. I know. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe throughout your life you're believing we're in debt, we're gonna die, everything is chaos, my house is on fire, get the children. I know. And I'm sorry to tell you that. All this time you've been lied to. There's no such thing as debt. There's no such thing as a $35 trillion debt. None of that is actually debt. That's just the amount that the U.S. Government specifically spent throughout the time. And I'm gonna explain to you guys what debt is, because I'm a little astonished that a lot of you guys do not go by the actual definition of what debt is. Debt implies of something that you are owed to something. For example, let's say that I tell this person, hey, I want this specific product or these specific resources that you have. And mind you, in order for me to get those type of resources, I need to exchange them for this amount of, let's say, apples. And I told him, hey, I do not have the amount of apples that you necessarily need for you to give this to me, but over time, I will make sure throughout the months I will pay you the amount of apples to the point, let's say, is the 6th or 7th month, you will have the total apples that you needed for me to be given this product, these resources to. That is what debt implies. It is something that you do not have, but over time you will get it and repay it. That is no longer the issue for the U.S. government, because mind you, the debt is basically, or like, let's say, it's not even debt. It's really something that you can just create out of thin air. Because remember, we no longer run on a physical gold standard of the currency. It is more just digital. We basically just get in a computer, type numbers in the computer, hit enter. Basically, you have the money. That's it. So we need to come into an agreement that debt is no longer an existing thing, because we can just make it whenever we want, specifically the government. Now you can argue, well, the U.S. citizen can get into that because they cannot just make the money. Correct. But specifically talking about the government, there's no such thing as debt. I hear these other talking points that I want to address, such as, for example, the most talking point that I hear is that we can't print money, they'll devalue the currency. Another ridiculous notion that I don't know why people bother to say, so I'm gonna debunk it. So no, printing money does not devalue the currency. What devalues a currency is when you no longer need that currency to have access to the real assets, aka the resources such as food, water, shelter, electricity, gasoline. These are the assets that when you tie it to the currency, it is what gives the dollar value.
Would any of you mop the floor for 1 donkey coin? Probably not. How about for 2 donkey coins? Probably not, because they're completely worthless. Now, if I had 2 guards with a machine gun waiting by the door and you had to hand in 1 of the donkey coins to get out, would you then change your mind? Everybody would, and everybody would try to mop the floor because you would need to in order to earn the donkey coins, as you would need to pay 1 of them to the guards in order to get out the door.
Okay, and another talking point that I hear is that printing money is going to create inflation. Again, no, you're incorrect. Printing money is not going to create inflation, and you're leaving a very key important component that leads to said inflation. Meaning, for example, imagine that you printed the money. Actually, let's establish what inflation is so we can all be on the same page. Inflation is when you hit a point where the demand is very high and the supply chain is very low, which is unfortunately not meeting demand. And therefore, we would call it as inflation. Okay. So we established that. The only way that it could occur for inflation to occur is when, let's say, you just print that money and you gave it to the companies and they not use that set money to increase the production of the real assets that many people consume on a day-to-day basis. And it really, you use it more on the stock market, buy a mansion, things that essentially are going to do the complete opposite and not essentially increase the production of the resources which people need, and it's not really going to fix the issue of the supply and demand. And so if you do that, then yeah, it's going to create inflation. But it wasn't because you printed the money. It was more because that money that you printed was very poor spend, or it was misused. So really, in that particular situation, you would address the person that you lend the money to, not you printing the money itself.